there's no real work being done on exactly what is the thing that you're tokenizing in a real world asset.
And very quickly we realized that the money wasn't moving fast enough for people to want to sell and use their Bitcoin or their assets as a currency.
If you ask Mr. and Mrs. Chan on the street, most of them are like, well, I like my Hong Kong dollars, but you know what? I don't want somebody tracking my money.
Hey everybody, happy to be here. And super excited to be back, this time with Angelina Kwan from Stratford Finance, and a long history in crypto and in traditional finance as well. So thank you for spending your time and taking time out and then coming to share a lot of the insights and experience that you bring across those two platforms into this show.
And welcome, Stefan. It's been a while that we haven't seen you in Hong Kong, but at least I got to see you in Switzerland. So Happy New Year, and thank you for the invitation. I am super excited to be here and really, really happy to see you.
Great. The reason why I called the show Super Excited was I am super excited. I think this is the most exciting time to be alive. There's so much change. There's so much opportunity. And I just want that hope to be transferred and you know, resonate with everybody that feels this is the most hopeful time to be an entrepreneur, or actually go and work at an entrepreneurial enterprise, or try to intrapreneur and be an entrepreneur from within an organization to change that. But besides that, what about you? How did you get, just maybe share a bit of your background versus me talking about it. You have so much, a wealth of experience.
Oh my God.
Where, how did you get into Bitcoin and crypto and how did that journey go?
Well, the journey first started when a friend of mine who lived in, I can't even remember where he lived, but in the islands of Hong Kong. And he said, oh, I have a friend that wants to set up an exchange. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, you used to be a regulator in this area. And I said, yeah, I used to regulate HKEX and I know about exchange regulation. So he said, can you give them some advice? And I said, sure. And we made the appointment, and these two men came out, and first person introduced himself as Jean-Louis Valvert, and the second introduced himself as Giancarlo Devasani. And these two young men were like, oh, we want to set up a Bitcoin exchange in Hong Kong. And I said, what in the world is Bitcoin? And they said, it's this thing that has come out in terms of the protocol, and Satoshi Nakamoto or a group of persons came up with this protocol. And we believe this is the future. And I said, okay, let's go through it. And we did an analysis. We looked at everything. And the final analysis was there was no problem with them opening an exchange in Hong Kong. And they actually went on to do so. And they started what is now known as BitMEX. And they were the founding fathers. And happily, Hong Kong was the home of their founding of BitMEX, and I'm very proud to even now remain very good friends with them, and I have a lot of time for them, and wherever they need some advice on rules and regulations, they'll give me a call, and I just love them to death, and they're great people. So that's how I got into understanding about Bitcoin. And from that, I started following it. And then how did I really get into it is a headhunter headhunted me out of Hong Kong Exchanges and Clearing. And she said to me, how much do you know about Bitcoin? And I said, enough to be dangerous. She said, well, this exchange is hiring for a COO. And I said, okay, I'll go look at them. And next thing I knew, I was the global COO for a derivatives exchange, a crypto derivatives exchange, which was the then largest at the time. And that really started my whole path to even more learning and being very interested in structuring and the rules and regulations pertaining to digital assets and crypto in general. And I really met some of the key people in the industry, and my boss, Arthur Hayes, just gave me so many opportunities to learn and set up things for them. Yeah. And I think that was some of the best times to be in the industry and learning at that time.
Yeah, I think you were very pivotal. I mean, from a Bitfinex, which is one of the top exchanges, to BitMEX, and then HashKey, which was a licensed virtual asset manager here in Hong Kong. So very pivotal in some of the big exchanges in Hong Kong. And as a result, Hong Kong was one of the innovators in really cryptocurrencies, trading, and the place to go to be a startup in this space.
Low tax, great place to work, really good tech people coming from some of the big firms that could do the most amazing coding. So if you look at all of the major founders, they all came from financial institutions. And Hong Kong being such a friendly place, easy to get resources and key people and investors, this was like the place to be, and it still is. This is what we hope to keep strengthening Hong Kong as a connecting place for digital assets and grow out the industry even more.
I think that's really, to me, that's really, I think I would add two elements to there. I think really education, it has a good educational platform, but also a sort of a laissez-faire, let it happen and let it evolve sort of approach to, from a regulatory standpoint, while still providing certain guardrails, don't go beyond these rails. But within that framework, you could operate and just don't do anything bad, but just do it within that framework, which I felt really allowed Hong Kong to be that creative. Why and how do you feel it lost its way somewhere where Bitfinex is no longer here? BitMEX is a fraction of the size that it was in terms of relevance in the marketplace. And some of the other players are no longer around. Do you feel it's lost its way, or is it still it's trying to find its way back and gain foothold in the crypto world?
I would say that it didn't lose its way. I would say that because of a number of intervening issues. So FTX, of course, imploded. Thankfully not here, but they imploded nevertheless. And they were first started here. BitMEX went through, and unfortunately they didn't listen and didn't put through certain controls which were KYC related. So that, of course, was another one. But do we have new exchanges? Yeah, we have definitely new exchanges that are setting up in Hong Kong, and existing exchanges that have chosen Hong Kong to be its home. So we have at least 10 firms in line trying to get licenses. HashKey was one of them that I was honored to be a part of as their COO and got them their license. The SFC is now bolstering headcount and resources to actually really put more focus into this area, and the new head there, Eric Yip, has promised a swifter licensing process that will go a lot faster, because we're competing, frankly, with Singapore, we're competing with Malaysia, Thailand, all the Asian countries, including Taiwan now, are announcing or have announced licensing regimes that will be coming in place. And we have a real competition out there in terms of, for example, Taiwan wanting to set up a licensing regime that will work with both AI as well as digital assets. So they can see the best of what we've done and the worst of what we've done, and they can learn from that. And that's why Hong Kong constantly needs to be upping their game and doing more work and attracting new entrants. And that's why Invest Hong Kong is important. And all of the people that live in Hong Kong that love this place need to also talk about how great Hong Kong is. And I think that's really important.
One of the words that keeps popping up that I see more and more is Hong Kong, right? Which is, I think is a nice play on words. And it definitely does have a homely feeling to it, even though it's the hustle bustle of a big city. You do have that element to it. But I think one of the things that plays in Hong Kong's advantage is the broad liquidity and the broad financial infrastructure and the legacy of that infrastructure that has been established and created over the last set of decades, if not longer. And you then see emerging markets like the ones you mentioned, but UAE and Shanghai and Guangzhou and Shenzhen and other markets around Asia, all trying to become the hub for capital markets, and after Tokyo, which is the leading in Asia at the moment. And how do you see that playing out? Sort of, do you think Hong Kong is really trying to find a niche? Is it going to grow a niche? Is it going to sort of be opportunistic? And it's always been lucky and fortunate in that. Or can it lay on its legal framework that it has relied on a lot to actually propel it to where it is today?
I think it's a combination of everything that you said. We have a tax structure that is zero taxes for all crypto in Hong Kong, and for companies trading in Hong Kong, crypto, zero taxes.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. Yeah. But it's an easy, quick win because capital gains are not taxed here anyways. So then it's making sure that the rules and regulations are relevant. And it'll be interesting because now finally the U.S. is slated to apparently be licensing their firms. So for example, Coinbase is not licensed by a securities or commodities regulator. Yeah. So now if Chairman Giancarlo is appointed, which God, I hope he is, he's a great guy, by Mr. Trump, he should be able to put in a licensing regime very quickly. And once that happens, then it's growth for every country that they decide to operate in. So if it's Coinbase that's licensed by the CFTC, then they can actually set up here because there will be mutual recognition between the SFC and CFTC. And they'll be able to get licensing very quickly here. And that's been precluded. That's why you don't see Gemini or you don't see Coinbase here, because they can't link their flows in with the United States because they're not licensed, and there's no licensing equality in there. And by having that lacunae fixed, by having licensing in the United States, that will be very good for Asia because they can set up here. And then our people can also go set up over in the United States because there'll be mutual recognition. So I can just see that the pie will actually get bigger for everyone, and hopefully we will have no new entrants coming in here. And the very reason that I thought this was such an interesting industry, coming in very early, is you can see the genesis of how regulation can actually help or inhibit the growth of a certain asset class. And you've seen in some cases where in Hong Kong you get people that are interested and licensed here. But can it go faster? Yeah, we can get more resources, they'll be licensed. But once the entire world gets licensed, you've got Europe having the entire comprehensive regulation that's just come through. Then you've got the United States, you've got Asia pretty much licensed. Then it's very easy, and then you'll see the advent of firms, the global firms coming together.
Yeah, because I think one of the things that I find, I was talking to Raoul Powell in a podcast a while back, and one of the things that he brought up was, in his experience and in the past, a lot of the derivative contracts and the collateral default swaps contracts were all actually developed in London or out of UK, under UK law. And that then expanded into markets like Asia that adopted those products faster and sooner because they actually saw higher returns on interesting products that actually suited the mathematical minds that are very strong in Asia. But also, and then took up in the Middle East, all under a consistent framework that really worked. And I think that just emphasizes your point. And then once the US opened up regulatory, the US became more regulatory friendly towards such products. All of a sudden, the Wall Street sales machine kicked in and then sold it across the US and brought it to a level and magnitude that was significant. And
that's why it'll be great for Asia as well as the rest of the world, because you'll get the same products, and then there can be
Yeah.
derivatives of
Yeah.
the products
Yeah.
of derivatives of derivatives
Yes.
of products too, that will come out of
Yeah.
this, because there is a regulatory framework
Yeah.
out there that you can launch these
Yeah.
things, and what can be launched here can eventually be launched over there,
Yeah.
and likewise, same thing.
And we were talking just before we switched on the camera was about real world assets, right? And the different interpretations of RWA, not risk weighted assets, but real world assets, the banks still believe that it's going to be actually the tokenization of a physical building with the land registry, the mortgage, and then to be able to then offset that and then find out what the token value ultimately is going to be associated with the square foot to this unique floor in this unique building, in this unique road, et cetera, et cetera. And so one thing that I view is more the synthetic element of this. And that's when how do you see the markets sort of coming together around a consensus of what is going to take place, right? You're already seeing tradability of synthetic real world assets,
Right.
but not necessarily the full scale growth of real physical assets.
Let me step back one step, if that's okay. So the great white hope of every single regulator, lawyer that I've talked to, and exchange that I've talked to, is they see the rise of real world assets being the next future.
Yeah.
And on the other side, they sort of think, ooh, crypto, evil, ooh, I don't like this stuff.
Yeah, it's weird.
But I think the world is going to go forward with real world assets. And as I think about that, I just sort of, and we were laughing about this before the camera turned on, that there's no real work being done on exactly what is the thing that you're tokenizing in a real world asset. And if you're going to be tokenizing the ownership of an apartment building, then which document are you tokenizing? Because in Hong Kong, for example, the ownership of a apartment building or an apartment by itself can consist of deeds that are about 2 feet high.
Yeah.
And are we going to tokenize that whole thing so that that real world asset can be sold and that token represents the deed and everything else? None of that work has been done yet in Hong Kong or other places. Maybe in some countries where one document says it all, maybe that can work. But I haven't seen it in a lot of countries. And anything with a UK or an English law type of thing will be stuck with a ton of deeds this high. So that work has been sadly not done yet. And then we talked about the derivatives. Well, what exactly are you going to be buying and selling? If it's a derivatives contract, okay, fine. Then we go under whatever the law of the derivatives contract is. But are you really getting what you're thinking? So there's been a lot of really clear guidance on tokenization of real-world assets. The SFC has a very good guidance note on that. But it's just fulfilling the parts of it. What exactly? And then let's see what the case law is going to look like. That I sold you something, and that's not the something that you thought you were buying. And then we have case law. Then we finally see whether or not all of these rules are actually working. But the great white hope of all the big banks, all the law firms for the future, as well as regulators, is real-world asset tokenization.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I sort of really got into RWA. When I first got into crypto, it was really around peer-to-peer electronic cash and how to build velocity associated with Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Ethereum. And very quickly we realized that the money wasn't moving fast enough for people to want to sell and use their Bitcoin or their assets as a currency. So they wanted to have a stablecoin as a currency. But then I met a law firm in the real estate business, and they were really gung-ho about RWA, right? It was really buildings.
Yes, exactly.
And my view around that was, what is the 10x improvement that a decentralized ledger, which is basically a decentralized database, a public ledger, would provide over and above what we have today and what they are working with today?
It should be faster, it should be more efficient, and should have less going through an ex-COO process.
Yeah.
It should be.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen any improvements made on this, nor have I actually seen any tokenization of a house and actually seeing it happen and being successfully done. I haven't seen that. And in order for it to be successful and move away from the current clunky process of an escrow agent, agents selling the property, making sure that the land registry reports it and all of that, I haven't seen any of that. And that's the issue, that it has to be tested. And I think a lot of people in the property market really hope that this does take off, but they're also worried that it hasn't yet.
Yeah.
And Mr. and Mrs. Lamb down the street, if they want to sell their house, they still have to list it through an agent. They're not going to be able to tokenize it and sell it to Stefan Rust just like that. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, so there's a whole ecosystem and a process that has been established over decades, and if not centuries, and that ecosystem has to now get digitized, get blockchainized, not just digitized, has to actually go onto the blockchain, and then it has to get tokenized on top of which given the alternative technological challenges and opportunities in front of these participants across the ecosystem, is going to then be very different in terms of timing, in terms of orientation, in terms of priorities across each of these assets. Which sort of, one thing that we worked with, and this is sort of where I sort of believe that the speed of adoption will be faster, is around synthetic elements. Is we've done a partnership with a company called Parcel out of New York.
Oh, wow.
And what Parcel does is they take the real estate price per square foot in a city and create a token associated with the price of a square foot in that market. And they follow the movement of that price.
Oh, wow.
And every time a transaction takes place, the price gets adjusted according to the square foot price associated with that specific transaction. That then flows up and down based on market demand and supply. And then investors can speculate on that movement. That's really valuable for the TRUF.Network, as it gives us price feeds on real estate in real time, faster on specific markets. And at the same time, in Truflation, it allows the Truflation CPI index to calculate more real time what prices in the property or shelter category and how that's moving.
Wow. So if I have bought that token when it was lower, and then somebody makes an announcement that New York is going to get the Olympics or something like that, and then the price of property goes up, then I can offload my token and hopefully make a gain off of that. And then on the other side, whoever was shorting it might have already made some money off of that also. So what you're saying is it provides a new source of investment opportunities, but we just haven't seen it in the real world area. The derivative side seems to work, but it's the actual selling of that real world asset. And that's the thing that is the great white hope of many regulators, to be able to do that.
But how do you view, sort of in the real world around real estate, what we do is you have a lot of land that hasn't yet been developed. Somebody maybe puts an offer for that. In order to finance the offer, they put designs together and try to get commitment on funding or purchases associated with that land. So that
is exactly what I want to do right now.
Yeah.
So, but yes.
So in essence, you're getting on the future hope that this building will be built on that piece of land. You're betting today that in 5 years or 3 years' time that land will be built, and you get it at a significant discount because you're early into the game. But it's synthetic. You don't know whether the contractor will go bust or will fall apart, or they can't get the mortgage.
Funding.
It can't get the funding. It can't, or the funding is much more expensive, or whatever the means may be. And so to me, it's just a digital equivalent or a fundraising mechanism for the digital component of it.
Yep.
Actually, that might be an interesting way. So tell me about what you're trying to do. No, that's. I can see where you. I mean, if I see what you're thinking, it's interesting.
I fell in love with the place, and I have been investing in property there, and I want to help the town of where I'm investing, and I won't mention where it is, but and I want to help the town regentrify as well as attract new people that would like to enjoy the beauties of that specific town, and it is an amazing ski resort on top of it. So hopefully that's exactly what I would like to do in terms of coming up with a design, coming up with the permits, and then getting people to be interested to help me and work with me to invest and develop it. And then we sell it and hopefully attract more people to the town. This is urban regentrification and renewal, and just hopefully setting up the town for the future, an even better future.
And would there be a way to leverage decentralized finance as a means to aggregate and pool the funding together?
I would love that if it could do that.
And then be able to then provide a yield associated with the real estate opportunity. I mean, ultimately, it's a projected future yield, but that yield immediately gets marked to market every time a physical transaction or activity happens on that real estate and that asset. And so that the lenders are a community of DeFi participants that actually help fund the real estate development up front.
If you look at the growth of Niseko, if somebody had actually done that, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that would have been huge.
Over the last 15 years, that would be a very good check. And it would be interesting to see this. I'd be willing to take a look at doing something like this.
Yeah, because we're working with a company, again, on the TRUF.Network, with a company called Spice Capital. And what they do is they fund spices. They bridge the loan between wholesalers and the farmers. So they actually need, the wholesalers buy a big contract, $100 worth, but they only pay 10% down payment, so they pay $10.
Right.
And then they have to go and source $100 worth of cinnamon or pepper, etc. But banks won't give them a loan. So where do they get the money from to pay the 80% that they need to then be able to sell it at 100%?
Oh, wow.
And they provide the yield, that difference, that 20% APY, to people that lend the capital so that they can go and acquire from the farmers. And so it's really interesting. And for us, the TRUF.Network, it's super interesting because, again, we get a new price feed, digital, and we can have it 24/7.
Oh, wow.
And then we can then be able to price these things out, and we can then forecast how much are spices going to impact the cost of chocolate or coffee or in the case of cinnamon and pepper, maybe not so much those elements, but that's how and where it starts.
Wow. So these types of innovative financing would be very interesting for the future. And I think as you unlock these cases and you see successful cases, then I can see this and everything that we hope for in digital assets to actually be revolutionized. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited, even now, to be a part of this, because every day people are willing to push digital assets, real world assets, tokenization, everything to the hilt to see where the whole industry will move to. And now you're also seeing the, shall we say, the industrialization of digital assets, and that all of the traditional firms are really starting to embrace this. And a major German bank who we thought, oh, they're really stodgy and stuck, they've just put in a complete digital asset custodial service in place. They have trading, they have everything all ready to go in Europe. And it's just a matter of time. They just press the button and they're going to start off. So this was one of the stodgiest, and I don't want to talk about their name, but one of the stodgiest banks I've ever heard of. And they're completely kitted out now, ready to go to trade digital assets for their clients, as well as hold and custody and do all sorts of services for them. So you're seeing now the adoption of digital assets, which is the thing that I foresaw in 2018, 2019, and it's really now happening.
It's beginning to come into place.
Big time.
I think you were working, just in your introduction, you talked about Bitfinex and what you were doing with them, and they were one of the sort of key participants in the creation of Tether, right? Which is it is the number one stablecoin across crypto, full stop. Extremely profitable, and a great product market fit, and it's an RWA.
Yep.
And just how, sort of, if I look at that, it's a synthetic dollar, but I mean, actually it's asset backed now, right? So they've bought a lot of assets underlying that. And that is a great use case that has scaled. How do you see other sort of, and it was a prediction, I think, on All In podcast. They were talking that one of the big, I think Chamath goes out and talks about, this is the year of stablecoins. But it's funny, we've had stablecoins for so long. It's like,
and they were the first to actually do this. And I have to hand it to the whole team there that they really were the first. And they came up with this amazing idea that it is stable. And you can pay for your purchases right now. I can only see it continue to grow, and there's a lot of competitors out there. And now with the regulation of stablecoins, you're seeing banking facilities, especially in Hong Kong, the central monetary unit is now retooling about how it clears and settles currency, but also how it will clear and settle the coins that are licensed by the HKMA. They're already thinking about it as a part of their design for the future and their innovation of their banking systems. So if I'm ABC Bank and I've got, not only do I do US dollar clearing, Hong Kong dollar clearing, but stablecoin clearing, and all the different types of stablecoin clearing will be able to be cleared by HKMA. So it's actually quite forward, and I'm very, very happy that they're already putting this in place.
When you say clearing, what does clearing actually mean from a financial perspective?
Because the banks,
institutional.
So with the announcement of the regulated, and I hope I get this right, with the regulated stablecoins by HKMA. So if you've put in your application and your ABC stablecoin, and you are accepted and approved by HKMA, then if it's approved by them, that means ABC Bank can also trade in this approved coin. And therefore, just like every day you move funds back and forth that are paper Hong Kong dollars or electric Hong Kong dollars, these stable coins will also be able to be moved back and forth because it'll be encrypted in the systems that they're building right now. So they're already thinking about this as a part of the next phase of financial infrastructure for Hong Kong. And I'm sure they're also thinking about this also for the CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies, because, of course, we've tied up with Saudi, China, and different countries to have a central bank digital currency. So that will also need to be cleared too. So those banking systems will need to be thought through, and how is this all going to change in terms of being able to accept stablecoins as well as CBDCs country by country.
So this will allow banks to settle amongst themselves the outstanding balances at the end of a business day, for example. There are different trading parities across a different network. And that network is going to be maintained and managed by a centralized regulatory body.
Which is Hong Kong Interbank Clearing Limited. HKICL is an amazing place that nobody knows about in Hong Kong.
Oh, yeah.
But it's basically the heart and soul of all interbank clearing within Hong Kong. And every country has something similar to this. But we have a very efficient one here. And it's going to have to be able to take care of these stablecoins that HKMA does license. So I think all the systems will need to be retooled to do that.
And I think Hong Kong, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hong Kong is focused very much on a B2B type stablecoin, right?
Yes.
So it's very much B2B, so banks to banks, and trying to settle at a much more institutional level.
That has been a big focus, and it seems that the most interest is there. But then the question is, will the Hong Kong dollar move into a tokenized format? Yeah. And I think if you ask Mr. and Mrs. Chan on the street, most of them are like, well, I like my Hong Kong dollars. Yeah. But you know what? I don't want somebody tracking my money. Yeah. That's the one that I get the most whenever I ask people. Yeah. And they're like, I like the fact that I have my cash and I can just go in and pay for it then and there. And nobody knows who I am. And nobody knows what I'm buying. And if you talk to some of the guys, they're like, oh, I don't want somebody tracking me buying some things that are illicit. Yeah. So that's the thing I think that's going to stop the e-Hong Kong dollar from being implemented.
On a retail basis.
On a retail basis. Yeah. So you can already buy everything through your Batatong, through your Octopus card and everything. Yeah. So
credit card,
you can
money's
do it
digital
through,
anyway.
Yeah, through HSBC, you can do your
FPS, I think is another one. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I think the focus now has been on tokenized deposits. Yeah, and that will be the interesting area, and then the move to a stable coin, a licensed stable coin that the HKMA will take. And I think that will assuage the fear that Hong Kong people will say, well, everybody's tracking where I'm buying stuff. So I think that will stop it, which is good.
There's also this global institution, the Bank of International Settlement, right?
Yes.
And they have a foothold, a very strong foothold in Basel, Switzerland. I don't know why.
Here.
And here in Hong Kong, right? I didn't realize until only recently that I read this book called Born in Basel, which is where the BIS was born, and it was all about the BIS and how it came about. But I didn't know that Hong Kong was such an important hub.
Oh, yes. Asia-Pacific hub.
Yeah, Asia-Pacific. How has that been helpful and beneficiary to a lot of the initiatives?
I think BIS, and my friend actually works there. Yeah. She's an ex-SFCer too, and is very into this whole area. So it was very natural for her to move into heading up part of the BIS here. And Benedict and her team basically have been working on CBDCs, but they've also been looking at the future of tokenized deposits and tokenization of real-world assets. And they've been very interested in working with the HKMA on the e-Hong Kong dollar project, Project Ensemble, which is going on with HKMA. These are the test cases of different solutions. And how can you use stablecoins? How can you use tokenized deposits? And just basically throwing the possibilities out there and having a sandbox actually to work on and work with other players to come up with solutions. Yeah. So it's been very interesting, and you can see them all published on HKMA. HKMA's website. Project Ensemble is going on right now. So there are different use cases that are being tested in the sandbox with HKMA. They then document it and come up with different opportunities, and it's all documented there that other people that are interested can actually go contact these different companies to maybe get involved or further grow on these. So BIS has also been a leading light in terms of moving forward with interesting projects, and the tokenization of deposits, tokenization of loans. Yep. These are all areas that BIS have been looking at. So
Hong Kong's built an amazing framework, has amazing institutional partnerships. We have zero tax. We have a great framework. We have big institutional partners. We have experimentation and the desire to experiment and try to innovate. And now we have meme coins.
Doggy coin.
We have fart coin. We have AI. AI
Is there a fart coin?
There's a fart coin, literally.
Okay.
And because it's warmer than cold air, it always rises. Fart coin must go up.
Yes, I love it. I love that. And then they must package it in a fart enclosed. Yeah, exactly.
A doggy poo enclosed cloud, or God. But I mean, there's lots of movements. There's lots of energy around these coins, especially on crypto Twitter, right? I mean, it's like all over. Every morning you wake up, hundreds of memes associated with this coin, that coin, 5,000 new ones a day, right? And so
it's amazing.
How do you see this playing out again in a world where we have CBDCs, big institutions going into the market? We have stable coins that sort of have acted as the liquidity for all crypto assets to grow to a $3 trillion industry. And then we have meme coins.
Yep.
And then now we have AI agents, but we'll talk about those later.
I think we were talking about this, and I think the more there's a whole world of people that play in this industry, and I actually know many of them, which is very funny. And I should actually learn more from them, or actually get a taste of all of the different meme coins. But I think each market has its own group of people. And you've got the people who still play in NFTs. You've still got the pudgy penguins that are still very popular, and they actually have been increasing in price. Just as the same, you'll have these meme coins that are out there actually funding these pudgy penguins. So the more pudgy penguin things they sell, the more the meme coins actually make money. And I think all of these are interesting ways of helping each other in terms of selling the pudgy penguins, but it also tracking the sale of them. So I think each market has its own benefits, and I think they're here to stay. There's no way that you're going to exterminate them out. It's not going to happen, because where there's money to be made, I think you're going to definitely have some kind of way to offload or get involved. So if I love, and I do actually have a pudgy penguin.
Oh, nice.
I just haven't taken it in my wallet yet, but hey, I would like to take my pudgy penguin and see if it goes up in price too, and maybe take a little bit of money off of the table, or from selling out franchising of that particular pudgy penguin. So there are new additional revenue streams, and I think people are constantly finding new ways of making money off of these assets, and I think that is here to stay. There's the cat's out of the bag, and you're seeing so much, what is it called, creativity in people coming up with new ways of making money. Now, this is where the regulator side of me goes, look, if you don't understand it, you better bloody learn about it before you get into it. If you don't know about it, don't buy it until you know about it. And unfortunately, people don't listen to this warning. And I think, if anything, out of your podcast, if you don't understand it, learn about it. And if you don't really understand it and are uncomfortable, don't buy it.
I mean, I think one thing we always say to everybody, you got to do your own research, and just try to remind and remind. But I mean, there are going to always be people that just FOMO in, and we've seen that time and time again, both in TradFi and in DeFi, from the Lloyd's names documents to, who was it, Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff, right? We've seen that at the big macro level, but we've also seen it in crypto, in FTX and Celsius and other examples, Terra Luna and also some of these meme coins, right, where it's just $50,000 rug pulls and things like that.
I mean, I'm embarrassed because I believed in FTX because my friends were all working there. And I've said, well, you know what? They're all pretty rational, and they would tell me if something went wrong, and they were trying to run it the right way. But I should have known better, because some of them came to me and said, well, we don't know how to value this. And I tried to teach them how to value and introduced an accounting firm to them to how to value their assets. And they didn't do anything about it. And that should have started the red sirens.
Good to go off.
They didn't. And that's why if you don't understand it, learn. And if you don't understand it, don't buy it until you understand it.
And that's partially also the reason why we do this podcast, is really to find people building and growing the industry, to be able to share their insights in terms of what is going on. Not just people trying to monetize in it, but actually trying to build assets and create this industry, because ultimately you're the best source of insight. You have a vested interest in the longevity of this industry and the growing of this industry. Not just a quick, fast turnaround and then a dump onto something, and then run away with, So that to me is really another purpose of this educational sort of format.
And I think, I will talk to anybody that will listen about digital assets, because I am so excited about the whole industry. But I'm also very, very wary that we need to teach people, and that's why I love going to universities to talk. I'll talk to people through the Women's Foundation to try to get financial empowerment out there, so that people understand, hey, you need to understand what you're getting into before buying something. And if it looks too good to be true, it usually is. So
I think that's interesting. When you talk to the universities, this is the new generation coming up. How do you feel they receive conversations around Bitcoin? How do they take that in? Are they aspirational? Are they full of hope anyway? And so you're feeding that hope, or is it they're depressed and then ultimately that converts into a new hope?
I think they're excited.
Yeah.
Because it means jobs, it means a future, it means an area for them to move into. But most of them are like, well, how do I get into this? Or what do I do? Or who do I talk to? Or where do I go? And I think that's where the resources of digital asset providers or people that want to find good staff, I think this is where having educational resources out on the web, that people can read about. If they want to get into this industry, what should people study? And I think that focus on guidance for young people moving into digital assets, AI, computer programming for the future, all of that is the future, and that's what we should be equipping our kids. So, for example, the charity that I work with, Women's Foundation, we have the Girls Go Tech program, and we help girls in the more underprivileged schools to learn about coding, learn about things that they can do if they go through computer science, if they go through the sciences, through maths and STEM classes. And it gives them the opportunity to explore STEM subjects. They learn to make models of cool boats, for example, but they had to do the coding of how to get the boat to move and do the soldering and stuff like that to get the engine fixed into. And they were explaining it to me. I was just like, oh my God, you learned how to do this? And she's like 7 to 10 years old,
wow.
and they're already working on these projects. So this whole area offers so much hope and opportunity. And we're seeing an area where women were never allowed to get into this area. And now we're trying to change families' mindsets that, hey, women can go into STEM and women can excel in STEM. And in fact, we're even putting our money where our mouth is. Morgan Stanley has just given scholarships, first-year scholarships, to any female that's gone through this program. If you're willing to go to school, they'll pay for the first year.
Amazing.
And then we can get other scholarships. So.
Yeah, because I think this has been the creation at significant scale for the first time of an asset class that was nothing beforehand.
Correct.
It was vaporware. I mean, it was really, it's now a whole new digital asset class that is $3 trillion. And by the likelihood, this is going to grow. It's going to grow to significant critical mass. and you're seeing all these new financing capabilities come out of this. And it is still, I mean, let's face it is still a bit new frontier. And so as a result, there are a lot of edges that are still a bit rough.
Yep.
It's not all oiled. It's not smooth. And there
but
will.
that's how equities were when we started.
Yeah.
And that's how tulips were
Yeah.
in the 18th century in Amsterdam
Yeah.
when they sold them on the side of a fence. And but that's how the markets actually progress and move forward. And you're just seeing more and more different types of markets opening up. In terms of some of the DeFi markets have just become more and more advanced and are even more popular than the centralized markets. So I think there's so much opportunity. It's just learning about the opportunities and making sure they don't blow themselves up, and making sure that they don't take advantage of people. So those are the
And so on January 20th, we have a new president entering into the US that has been very pro-Bitcoin.
Yes.
We have Gary Gensler retiring from his position as the SEC chairman. It looks really rosy for this new asset class, crypto. And is that your feeling as well? Is that a mutual sort of, it's going to be a bright yet still not very stable, but it's going to be even stronger and greater in opportunity and accelerate even faster?
I think this is going to be the case. And if Chairman Giancarlo is also appointed, I think he is an amazing man that I had the honor and pleasure of working with when I was at HKEX. And I think he will basically help the whole market a lot if he is appointed on the CFTC side. Because it is not clear whether or not the SEC or CFTC will be the lead regulator in this, in the regulation of digital assets. So it'll be interesting if it is the CFTC that does do this, because Chairman Giancarlo would probably go back as the chair of that and then preside over that whole area. And then on the security side, they'll have to work with SEC and CFTC will have to work how they regulate Coinbase and all of the different exchanges. And then how will they regulate the futures exchanges that come up from that? Because right now, futures exchanges are not legal per se. And they will probably license those also. The only one that has the license is the CME. And so that's a great monopoly right now that I'm sure a lot of companies would like to break. And maybe this will be the reascension of BitMEX again in a new format. So the U.S. And all of the stuff that comes out of it after the inauguration will be very interesting. And I think it just gives more opportunities to digital assets globally, because once you get clarity in the U.S., you've got clarity in Europe, you've got clarity pretty much in Asia. So this big block in itself is enough to actually help IOSCO, which is the International Organization of Securities Commissions. They've been actually putting out global guidance to all the regulators around the world. Once all of this comes out, then all the other regulators that are coming through with people that are selling Bitcoin in Africa and in Cambodia, then the regulations will come through. And then IOSCO and the different regulators will need to work together to train these emerging market regulators about digital assets and what do's, don'ts, how does it all work. I got a question asked by one regulator just recently from an emerging market, and they were like, we have all of these people that are like money changers, and they're selling crypto there, and how do we regulate them? And I'm just like, oh Lord, this is already happening in that particular country, and they're not equipped to be able to regulate this. But then, do their local people get scammed, and how do they enforce the laws on this, and how do they protect investors if that money changer isn't actually giving crypto to the people that are going through and supposedly getting
fake crypto token assets.
So this is what we need to train people. And the securities markets had 100 years to go through this. And we're talking 2008 when the Satoshi Nakamoto protocol came out. You're looking at less than
10, 12 years, 15, 16 years actually,
So
I think, then we have, on the flip side, there's always an argument, right? On the one hand, you have in the US where we've got the Doge now coming out, government efficiency. Like you already mentioned, in the US, you've got all these 3-4-letter acronyms that have overlapping responsibility. Will we see a consolidation over there? You have the flip side where Europe is highly regulated, over-regulated to the extent that people now begin to feel that actually it's inhibiting innovation and actually slowing it down. And then you've got, real Wild West, like you just mentioned, in Africa, where, for example, I'm doing, or any country around the world where there's money exchange taking place and you're getting crypto and it's in some token address that is not even relevant. Who knows if that's a valid token address?
Exactly.
How do you verify all of these?
And how do we get the people in those particular countries knowing how to actually verify? Because if they think they're buying crypto, do they even know how to buy crypto? Do they know that they had to have a wallet in place, even if it's on your Trust wallet in your iPhone? But do they even know how to do that to transfer the crypto in it? So all of that education process really needs to happen in all of the emerging markets. And this is where consumer education is going to be so integral in regulators around the world. And IOSCO, the international organization of all of these regulators, is really trying to push this. But it's like a huge wave. I don't think they even know how to start this because it's such a big asset class and it's growing so quickly. And I hate to say it, it's because of greed, it's because of excitement, but it's also because of a future. So,
I mean, I personally feel the regulators do not have the capacity to handle this. We have to leverage social media as a means to advocate and educate. There are a lot of influencers out there. Find those influencers is all I can say in terms of how to source and recognize a crypto asset. Get a right kind of wallet, a trusted wallet, a Coinbase wallet, a MetaMask, a Phantom wallet, or whatever kind of wallet you want to be able to verify the asset that you're going to be getting. Those are all steps. How do we educate everybody on getting access to that and using those sources to do that? In the meanwhile, setting up ways to punish bad actors, to capture bad actors. We don't do that. Instead, we want to regulate everything, but don't go after the bad actors.
Exactly.
We need to go after the bad actors, and there are only 2 to 4% of them are really bad actors. And if we can capture them and put up sort of signposts that this is what happens if you are a bad actor, so that it scares you away.
This is the major area, because if you look at all the people that have caused problems, with the exception of some of the big cases in the United States, people really haven't actually sat real jail time to make it hurt. And I think this is something that actually hurts the industry more. If people know that, look, you're going to get punished if you rip off people. It's the same in anything else. If you rip off somebody in something else, you're going to get jailed. And they need to know this. If not, they're just going to keep ripping off people and hurting lives and hurting livelihoods. We had a problem in Hong Kong just recently with a case, and this particular case was very ugly, and it collapsed, and a lot of people were involved in it. But they couldn't even find expert witnesses because people were scared that it could have been triad related. So how do we really take, and how do we help our police to actually take enforcement forward? And I think enforcement is going to be key, just as having licensing powers are going to be key, but also being attuned to helping the market develop and grow. So it's this uneven balance that has to always constantly be looking at each other of enforcement, market conventions and market growth, and then making sure that people are educated and so on and so forth. And I think this is where all countries need to really focus on this, because digital assets, CBDCs, stablecoins are not going away.
No.
They're just going to move even faster.
And meme coins.
And meme coins are not going away. Those little doggies aren't going anywhere.
But I think it's that's exactly it. They're not going anywhere. How do we have cross-jurisdictional enforcement? The current regulatory framework needs to be restructured in a way that allows for cross-border enforcement at a faster pace, because we can track it all. I can follow the money anywhere to any wallet address on the open network. It is so transparent.
Yeah.
It is so super transparent. But I can't do anything about it.
Exactly. And people don't know how to do it. Okay, if they learn how to do it, they don't know how to then marshal their resources, because, it's run off to this country and I don't have an extradition.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have an extradition treaty. I don't know who to contact in that country, who's the cybercrime unit over there, et cetera, et cetera. And certain cybercrime departments, I mean, the FBI is by far way ahead of the rest of the world, I gotta say. And then other countries are still, they don't even have the tools to be able to, as you mentioned earlier.
But the countries that actually have the biggest chance is actually the EU. The EU, with its integrated licensing, if it does the right thing in terms of building it out and then putting in these lines of working together for enforcement. So now they have this licensing regime in the EU. But if they can actually start putting the railways in place for all of the assets to go through the same processes, and then enforcement to go through the same processes, that all the countries work together to stamp out crime and things like that, then the EU has the best possibility. Because even the United States, which is made up of 50 states, they are 50 different countries. And going from trying to prosecute somebody from California in Louisiana isn't going to work very well unless Chairman Giancarlo and whoever the new appointees will be to make sure that this enforcement is in place. And then, God help us, globally, how do we actually push that out? But the EU has the best chance now because of the licensing regime being standardized. With ESMA putting out this, at least all the countries are working together now.
That's the first time I've actually heard something positive about the EU regulatory framework.
If you look, there are some real benefits to it. It's just that they need to actually move forward of how can they work together and how can all the countries work together. Now that you have a licensing format that everybody has to follow, that everybody has to promulgate, then the enforcement should follow that too. And because they've all agreed and signed to do it this way, then at least you've got agreement. But it's better than like 50 states in the United States.
That all have different frameworks. I think it's really, there's a really interesting movement right now in Europe that is led by techpreneurs. It's about technology acceleration across the EU and seeing greater adoption of new technology for driving growth as a way to get out of the big debt problem, the budget deficits that a lot of these governments are operating under, as a means to get out of some of the challenges that are put in front of them. But that's something that I've been tracking and following. But they have a lot of problems on the other side. And the retraining of talent, I think, is going to be a big challenge.
This, I think you are absolutely right. And getting young people interested in this area and getting them in through classes, getting them into the opportunities is something that I think all governments need to do more. To me, this is hope. To me, this is jobs, hope, transportability. And you've seen what happened with the EB-5 plan, where people were sent through Infosys to the United States, and that was 20 years ago. And now you're seeing Indian CEOs of companies who benefited from the EB-5 program. And there should be other programs like that in different countries that allow people to be trained. And India has been some of the best in terms of training coders and things like that. But other countries should be doing this for both men and women so that people have a future, people have jobs, and people have a focus to move forward. And I think this is something that I hope in Hong Kong we continue to do. And I think this is a key area of focus for our government. To get kids into coding and STEM. And certainly for girls who were never allowed really to do this by their families, now we're breaking down barriers to get families involved in their girls' schooling. And I think this has been a great sea change.
Angelina, brilliant. I mean, just so much knowledge, so much insights, and thank you so much for sharing. How can people follow you, find out what you're up to, Stratford Finance, and how should they stay connected with all the work
setting
that
up
you do?
I never got around to setting up this X account. So I've been setting it up, so I will get it up and running, and we can talk, and I'll put some stuff in there. And I
do you have a LinkedIn or website?
I do have LinkedIn, which is under Angelina Kwan. So happy to take comments and questions. And I have a website under Stratford Finance, which is also going to be revamped. And so
awesome.
this will be the year of revamping for me. So.
2025. Yep. Now's the time to start.
It's a new year. Yes.
Happy
Thank you so
New Year.
much, Stefan, and Happy New Year, and looking forward to that next coin that I can invest in.
Yeah, we will get that. We will get there.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.